A lot of things we do in our life we take for granted, and it's things that we find we use them every day, like opening up the refrigerator to get a drink of milk or some orange juice or a beer. And our Amish friends, it's not quite the same. They have to think outside the box. How can they have these same comforts without being dependent on the government or on the grid? I always want to emphasize that the Amish don't live their simple life just to prove to the world that they can survive. They're trying to prove to the world that they're independent, that they can depend on themselves to survive in this world and not on the government and not on the grid. So they're not against electric. They're not against refrigeration. They're not against any of these things. It's how they get these things. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how do the Amish refrigerate or keep their food cool, unlike us, and not use that electricity coming from the county and paying that bill. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. I do want to share one thing. Another hurdle that they had to overcome. My husband drives for the Amish. He drives a produce truck, and they go 90 miles a couple times a week up to Columbus, and they deliver produce. Well, one of the problems in the back of the truck is there's no air conditioning. My husband just didn't happen to have that in his truck. So they got really innovative, and one of the things they did was bought an Icy Breeze cooler, and they put ice in it, and then it just cools the back of the truck. And one of the things that we do each night to help them is we fill up these plastic ice cream buckets with ice to get a big ice cube, and my husband puts them in there. So they do depend on us for some things, and even along the way they are not against using somebody else's ice machine to fill that bucket back up. But at home they don't have these conveniences. There's not somebody driving by the house and dropping off blocks of ice so that they can keep their food cool, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You're probably wondering, how could people possibly cool their food without having a refrigerator plugged into the electric? And you have to remember, appliances did not really become popular until the early 1900s. So what do you think people did before then? I still remember stories from my grandparents telling me when the Iceman came down the street with the horse and buggy, and they literally got blocks of ice off the wagon and put them in their home into an insulated box of some sort. And the Amish, some families still do that. It really depends on what community or which church they are associated with. The Amish are split into different churches, very small groups of 25 to 35 families, and the bishop of that group will decide whether or not they can use certain implements or not. Some Amish still have to use blocks of ice, and they have insulated boxes or insulated walk-in rooms that they put those blocks of ices in. And believe it or not, if they insulate that room really well, some of that ice can last for up to a year, but it depends on the insulation, and they can keep that cold. How do they get those blocks of ice? Because we certainly don't have the horse and buggy coming down the road like they used to. In the more northern communities, probably up into Canada and northern parts of America, they can go out to a lake and literally get a saw and cut out chunks of ice, and they will use a pick it up, put it on the back of a wagon, and bring them home. Now, unfortunately, if they live more southern than that area, they probably use other methods. I know in our community around this area of southern Ohio, a lot of the families have propane refrigerators. The refrigerator looks just like the refrigerator that you might have now. Well, maybe not. A lot of us have those fancy stainless steel refrigerators, the ones that they might have had back in the 1960s or 70s, just a plain refrigerator, nothing fancy. But they do make them to plug into natural gas or propane. Of course, you have to have that coming into the house. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I thought they didn't use electric. Propane and natural gas are not connected to the grid. A truck has to come out and fill a tank that's in the yard. So that's the difference. When you bring electric in, it's coming literally from a big company, it's connected to wires, and it's connected to a grid in the community. So that's the difference. They have to literally go out and buy that natural gas and fill it into the tank that's on the property, or the propane. Now, other things that the Amish do will keep their food cool is to can. They can a lot of their food, and they have shelves and shelves of canned food down in their basement. A basement typically will stay pretty cool, and that's a really good place to can and store their food. So that is another method that they use. I know we're used to, like, we will get lots of vegetables or fruit and we put it in the refrigerator. A lot of times the Amish will eat whatever they're producing out of their garden, and they eat it or they can't. Give me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Thumbs up. Don't forget the thumbs up. I appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to get 10,000 by the end of the year, so help me out. So anyway, you have a blessed day, and thank you so much for watching the video.